So here we are again for our explorations into the Murli, and the Murli that we're looking at is today's Murli, which is November 3rd of 2021. And I'm assuming that you all heard this Murli or read this Murli, so you're familiar with it. And I would like to read from you some points from the Murli notes that I sent out connected with this Murli. And because there were several themes, and I found them quite interesting. Basically, what happens in the realm of religion as it is mostly understood in the world where we live, and then spirituality. So there are, in my observation, there are really three things going on, and all three are taken up in every Murli, because Baba has to contextualize what he's telling us in the context of where people are. So in all of the religions, there are, on the one hand, recommendations for improving your behavior, like giving up the 5 vices and being nice to people, and then you will become very divine, and there will be peaceful relationships, and that would be nice. But mostly people don't much change as a result of the efforts, because this is not just only in Gyan that we hear about this, but I think for at least 1,000 years, all the religions have been trying to get people to be nice to each other and behave well and all of this. So that doesn't seem to have succeeded. So Baba is also looking at that. Secondly, the context in which Baba gives knowledge is the context of the various different religious beliefs and the social customs and superstitions also, and practices and lifestyles that are all connected with those beliefs. And then the third stream is the actual Gyan, which Shiv Baba gives. And this is the one that I find most interesting. This is why I picked up the Gyan and stayed with it for so many years, because the seeker of truth is interested in the truth, that is the knowledge, the details that the sannyasis say, the creator and the creation. So that is of primary interest, I think, to someone who wants to know truth. So I'll take up some of the references that were in the Murli today, because Baba says, okay, for example, he talks about Umavas, which is the day of the new moon. And in Bhakti, there are many religious and superstitious beliefs associated with the new moon. And then there is also the symbolic meaning of the new moon, which Baba took up in today's Murli. So he continues to use this teaching method of taking up something that everybody believes in and gives importance to. And then he says, okay, now let me tell you what is the deeper meaning of this. And that then is our study. So the symbolic value of the new moon is taken up by Baba as a symbol of how dark the dark night of the soul can be. So when it's night, it could be the full moon, so it's pretty light. But when it's the new moon, it's really dark. So night is dark, but the darkness is mitigated with the light of the sun, which is reflected by the moon. But at Umavas, the night of the new moon, there is no light of the sun reflected in the darkness to mitigate the degrees of darkness. So that's a really dark night. You cannot see anything at all. So the symbolic meaning is that not even a grain of truth remains in the minds of people when the night of Kali Yuga reaches that absolute dark night. And everyone is under the influence of incorrect concepts. Concepts about karma, concepts about God, concepts about the souls particularly. And consequently, they perform wrong karma in all situations. They think it's right karma, but the concepts are incorrect. So then the karma they do on the basis of incorrect concepts becomes also incorrect. And then they become increasingly indebted. That means the amount of sin, the weight of sin on the soul is heavier. And that's hard to bear. And so Baba comes specially to give us that information to get us to understand how to lighten that burden and ultimately take it off altogether. And that is called finishing your sins. It's called purification. It's called becoming Sato Pradhan. There are many different ways of describing this. So when it is Umavas, then the devotees perform the ritual of worship of the ancestors. So Baba mentions this in the Murli, but then he describes the inconsistency in their beliefs and their rituals. I don't need to mention that because you already heard that in the Murli, but the symbolic value of this is that in the confluence age, we all are here in the confluence age, in the really dark, dark night. And we are at a point in the confluence age where, till recently, Baba is no longer speaking new Murlis, either through the medium of Brahma Baba or, since 1969, as Avyakta Bab Dada, speaking through the medium of Dadi Gulzar. So this finished recently. And then came COVID. So the next level, the Dadis, pretty much all have passed on. We have maybe just one or two remaining, and they are very, very elderly. So these are called the ancestors. And you know that Dadi Janki had got a picture made with all the, what she called the ancestor souls, the Dadis and the Dadas of the Yagya, who really were with Baba, who really understood the Gyan and yoga and embodied it. These are called the ancestors. And they are no longer physically accessible because they've all passed on. And so that makes this a kind of umavas. And that's a time when people feel uncertain and insecure. And then Baba speaks about the rituals that the Lokik Brahmins have established. And he says basically they are a means to earn money through the devotees. But he's always comparing the Lokik and the Alokik. So we are Alokik Brahmins, and we are not trying to do rituals to earn money from devotees, but we do have to understand the knowledge well and become embodiments of that. But yet, when circumstances change, people become uneasy, uncertain, and maybe also insecure. So Baba gives us the reassurance that he is here. He's with us. He went from Sakar to Avyakt and now beyond Avyakt. So Avyakt, but not coming into a body. So what do we have is we have all the knowledge from Sakar Murlis, we have all the knowledge from Avyat Murlis, and that's a huge, gigantic body of information, but one which we have not necessarily, or not all of us, have gone deep into the depth of. So this is our treasure. And my feeling is when he says, I've come to give you your inheritance, the inheritance is the knowledge. That's what we want from God. And what we do with the knowledge creates our status in the golden age. It enables us to satisfy our desire to understand God and the soul and the drama and karma and all of that. And also, he teaches us the knowledge of karma philosophy, so we are able to perform the best of the best karma under his direct guidance and then create the best fruit of karma. And this is why he often says, you are establishing heaven for yourselves, because Shiv Baba, once he's finished telling us everything and fulfilling his relationship with us as our father, our teacher, and our Satguru, then he goes into retirement and we come into the world of heaven, and the whole cycle starts again and continues until the end, when he comes and meets us once again after 5,000 years. So he gives us the reassurance that he is here with us, even though no Sakar, no Avyat, but he's here. He has given us all the information we need to empower ourselves, to be clear, and to be adequately educated to perform pure karma and to set ourselves in yoga. So this is a call to fulfill the expression Ek Bal, Ek Bharosa. So Ek Bal means one power, and Bharosa, one support. So he is the one power that can empower us, the one support that can support us. And so we must not look anywhere else for support, because any other support will not support us. It will fail us. But Baba is very subtle. So we must also practice to become very subtle. So the very subtle soul takes support from the very subtle Supreme Soul. So there are tests. And the test now is, I think, do you understand the spiritual knowledge deeply? As a question to ask yourself. And have you made this knowledge a practical reality in your life? Because what we're trying to do is take this knowledge from something we understand theoretically, something that we apply all the time, day and night, in our dealings and interactions and activities, so that it becomes sanskaras. Another question, do you walk your talk? What you say, do you also do that? And if not, how big is the gap? And what are you doing to make the gap small? Then another question, have you accumulated what you need? Powers, yoga, light, energy. Have you accumulated what you need to pass through the coming time, which requires clarity, personal power, and stability? So it is you and God. Then the next question is, are you afraid? Because when you kind of realize it's just you and God, you can feel a little afraid. But Baba says, he's very strong and he's there. So you don't really need to be afraid. But if you feel afraid, go into the depth of why you feel afraid and intensify your trust that Baba is there. And also make yourself more subtle, because the more physical we are, the more gross we are, the more these unstable things can destabilize us. But the more subtle we are, we're more on Baba's level, and then all the instability of the world doesn't really cause us any trouble. So make your faith in truth, in purity, and in the company of God so strong that you will not falter in the face of many difficulties and confusing situations. So if one is a small child, then the parents will take care of you during difficulties and confusing situations. But when you grow up, then they won't do that. And so I think that the shifting from sakar to avyak and now to something very subtle is a signal to us that, okay, you've been to kindergarten, you've been to middle school, you've been to high school, you've been to university, and now you're ready. And so there will be exams. And can you manage these exams as an adult, well-grounded, well-educated Brahmin with a good foundation? So we all know what is right conduct in our relationships. We know very well what is it to be virtuous, what is it to be talk well to people, and all of these behaviors we know very well. So he expects us to act correctly, even if many around us may not act correctly. It doesn't mean we have to act incorrectly, but our karma, my karma, is me doing what I know to be the right thing, nothing to do with what other people are doing. So we must act correctly. Each one is accountable for their own karma. So Baba's talking to us about our accountability. And it's a really very deep and interesting subject to take up. So I found it very important, very fascinating, because, you know, it's so easy to do something and get away with it. And then you think, well, it doesn't matter. But then Baba says, no, everything you do and all of the impact that you have on people, if you do the right thing, you have a good impact. If you do the wrong thing, you disturb people. The account of all of that is with Baba. And one fine day, we will be called to account, and that is called Dharmaraj. So each one is accountable for their own karma. And Baba gives the example, if someone is treating others in an aggressive manner, yet telling those people to be sweet, well, who will take that person seriously? Because there's inconsistency between how you behave and what you tell other people to do. If you become the example of it, then say that. You won't even need to say that. You just become the example of it, and that's a communication right there. So Baba says, all of our behavior, none of it is hidden. Everything is very visible to all of us, each other, and to Baba. So Baba says, certainly such a one will lose their status. Sometimes if you are in a very high position and people respect you very much and they honor you, and they will not say anything about your mistakes because of their respect for you and respect for your position. But they will see. And the other thing Baba said is it's normal to experience praise and defamation in the social environment. Any social environment you're in, whether it's the family, your professional arena, your community, whatever it is, it's just the nature of things. There will be praise and defamation. And in the Gita, it talks about these things, the pairs of opposites. So Baba says, you will experience this. Don't be surprised, but use your spiritual power to remain in equanimity. Equanimity means you're not disturbed by it. It doesn't make you come into this emotion or that emotion, but you're able to hold yourself steady, even if somebody praises you way too much, which sometimes they may, or they defame you and you get character assassination and so on, which may be false accusations and whatever, but stay steady in the middle of that. This is one of our exams. Then Baba talks in detail about the settlement of karma. So he says, if you tell Baba honestly about whatever is on your conscience from this life, then half of it will be forgiven, half, 50%. And you have to take care of the other 50%. But you also have a lot of weight of negative karma from previous lives. Now, it's impossible for us to calculate that because our conscience only bites us about this life. And we don't know what we did in previous lives. We know in general we were deities and then warriors and then merchants and then Shudras. And we had 63 births of body consciousness. So probably we did all sorts of things, but we have no idea. Every negative karma that we do is shows up in our sanskaras. And we have a tendency to do it again, again. So that if you really understand your, like the composition of your character in this life, it gives you a very good idea about your journey through all the 84 births. And you can understand by what negative tendencies you have that they must be connected with something that you have still to pay for. And this forgiveness that Baba gives for half of the karma doesn't apply to the 63 births. It only applies to this birth. So we have this heavy weight of negative karma from previous lives, which we have to settle all of it at this time, because this is called the time of settlement for all outstanding karmic debts. So that's different from any other life. Normally, as we go life after life after life, at the end of each life, we have to settle the debts of that life. But some of them don't get settled, and then they get added to as well. So now it's quite a big thing to finish all your karma from all your Copper Age and Iron Age births, which you don't know anything about. So there will be things that happen to you to do with your health, to do with your mental health as well as physical health, to do with your circumstances of your birth, your family, and your ability to acquire and accumulate money and pay your debts and everything, how you are in the society, in the community, if people look upon you favorably or unfavorably, all this is connected with karma. And so this is the circumstances where we come to Baba and he says, I will give you what you need so that you can settle your karma in the best possible way. So this is an incredible gift. So at this time, take care not to perform any karma that puts you in debt. Because not in this Murli, but in another Murli, Baba has said that whatever karma you do as a Brahmin in the confluence age, knowing the philosophy of karma, if you do something negative, your payment for it will be a lot heavier than someone who doesn't know what we know. So, so that means it's very important that as Brahmins, we do the right karma if we don't want to incur very heavy debts that we will have to pay. So one of the ways in which we pay for doing negative karma is that this negative karma prevents us from taking our inheritance from Baba. And that's a very deep idea. And I will illustrate it with a story that, not a story, but something I observed when Daddy Janki was in London, and all the time in London and teaching everyone all these secrets. So there was one brother who was from England, and he really liked the knowledge and yoga and everything. And every time he would come to class, he would fall asleep as soon as the Murli started, and then he would wake up as soon as it's finished. And there was nothing he could do about it. He could drink coffee, he could, sit in a very uncomfortable place so he couldn't fall asleep. But no matter what, he would fall asleep and he could never listen to the Murli. So he asked Daddy, what's going on? And Daddy said, well, this is because of some negative karma, which is actually preventing you from being able to listen to the Murli. So I thought, wow, that's something that we didn't really anticipate as a consequence of negative karma. So this is called, it will prevent you from taking your inheritance from Baba. So Baba's wisdom, clarity, and depth of knowledge will be unavailable to you. Even if it's right in front of you, you won't be able to take it in. You won't be able to hear it. You won't be able to comprehend it. All this is like blocked. And you may have all the information, but you will not be able to use it. So that's one kind of settlement of karma. Do not be deluded into thinking that Baba will take away your problems. Many people, especially religious-minded people, they believe all you have to do is have faith in God and all your troubles will go away because he's called the remover of sorrow and the giver of happiness. And so many people think that if they have a problem or a difficulty or some challenge, that all they have to do is tell Baba about it and he'll take it away, or have a bit more yoga and it'll miraculously disappear. But that's actually an illusion. It means we haven't quite understood what this is all about, because you do have to face your own stuff. So we have to be strong. And one of the powers, which is called the power to face, is especially good for that, to be able to face the reality of any negative aspect of yourself. Face it, acknowledge it, deal with it. And that takes strength. But Baba is always with you. So remember this, Baba's always with you, but he will not do your work for you. He will tell you how to do it in 1,000 different ways, but he will not do it for you. So this is, in a way, one of the differences between Gyan and Bhakti. In Bhakti, they think he will do everything. And in Gyan, you realize that, no, you have to do everything. Sometimes Baba said, if I did your work for you, then I would go to heaven. And what about you? Where would you go? So then Baba goes into the depth of this subject of accountability. So Dharmaraj is exactly this. You're called to account. So Baba is aware of everything, and he says, together with him, there is Dharmaraj. So what is Dharmaraj? It's like an automatic machinery of the settlement of karma. And at such a time, Baba has to remain the detached observer while you are called to account for your actions and while the settlement is taking place. So he's there, but he's also watching how you handle this, because it's a test, it's an exam, and he's the teacher, but he will not take your exam for you, and he will not help you when you're in the middle of the exam, but he wants you to really come through the exam with honors. So all of this takes place internally in your mind. So Baba also says it might take place while you are in the womb of your next birth, but the experience will be in your mind. So there will be visions. You'll see visions of what you did. And then there are experiences that you feel, which are the payment for the outstanding accounts. And so Baba used the word in the Murli, hunter. The hunter is a whip. And so in certain prisons, when somebody goes in prison, they get beaten. And so when you are in the prison of the womb, you experience these kind of beatings for whatever you did. And so it's not very nice. But you have to pay for the outstanding accounts. So any incorrect action performed in the confluence age by a BK who knows the difference between right and wrong karma will have to be faced, and the consequences will have to be endured. Sometimes you experience bodily sickness and physical, emotional, and mental distress. This too is settlement of karma, and you have to endure it patiently. Use your powers of tolerance and accommodation to manage all this. It cannot be avoided and must be faced. When you have accumulated much power of yoga and depth of understanding of Gyan, that gives you far, far greater capacity to pass through the difficulties of settlement of karma. And when the karmic debt is settled, you are free. This is the speciality of the practice of Raj Yoga, and this cannot be accomplished through any form of Hatha Yoga. So Baba gives us the power to transform great suffering into something mild. So this is extraordinary. When you see a Raj Yogi going through something and somebody who's not a Raj Yogi going through the same thing, how they handle it is quite different. So all this is predestined in drama. So this is a very interesting statement Baba makes. He says, you must not do any negative karma because you'll have to pay for it. But then it's in drama that you will do that and you have to pay for it. So it's a paradox. And because it's a paradox and it's predestined, whatever you did, don't use up your time regretting it. And if only I hadn't done that, and so on and so forth. This idea of it being predestined is a message that says, don't regret anything. Just say, okay, I did it. This is what I did, and this is how expensive it is, and I pay, and then I'm free. And if you do it like that, it's actually better, because otherwise it becomes really much worse. And so we don't need to do that. And if it's predestined in drama, you can't waste time feeling guilty or any of that. So Baba says, as much as possible, make the full effort to empower yourself with yoga and gyan, because these are the two things that really give you the strength to get through everything. Plus, perform as much pure karma as you can. So what is pure karma? Service, meditation, study, anything that you do which moves yourself forward, moves Baba's work forward, benefits other people, all of that is some kind of pure karma. So do as much as you can. Don't waste time doing other things, because this will help you at the time of settlement. So the imperishable Father is giving you imperishable knowledge, which will take the form of health, wealth, and good relationships for the coming 21 births. So all the difficulties we are dealing with in the confluence age is for a reason, is for a purpose. And so keep that purpose in mind, and that helps you get through the difficulties without really thinking about them too much, and also more quickly. So this is Baba's great gift to his children. Everything of the old world is collapsing, everything. And we have to pass through this and let the old world go. So Baba is establishing the new world for us, his children. So we must practice all the different forms of purity, stay in remembrance, and take power. And in this Murli, Baba emphasized that Brahma Baba has to do this. And we also have to do this. Sometimes people think Brahma Baba doesn't have to do this. He has to. And sometimes people think some BKs don't have to. No one is exempt. Everyone must do. So now the beliefs and practices of Hinduism or Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or all the other belief systems will not actually help you at this time. This is why Baba gives us Gyan, because that will help us. So Baba provides everything we need. Knowledge, power, and the blessings of your pure karma, because this will carry you across the great transformation of the world. So those are the points that I wanted to read for you, because this Murli was so rich and so many things in it, and many more that I didn't take up, but those were the ones that I felt were really important. A lot of people have questions. What is Dharmaraj exactly? And how do we get free from negative karma, sins, etc.? So this Murli really took up that topic in quite a lot of depth. So we have clarity about it, and that is really nice. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I think so. So let's take a look at that.
Please explain the Murli point about Dharmaraj when Baba said the punishment from Dharmaraj is incognito. Why Baba said, I have Dharmaraj with me, but then Supreme Father and Dharmaraj Baba are both present. So, three things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, Dharmaraj can be translated as the rule of law or the rule of righteousness. So Dharmaraj is not necessarily a person. There are many personifications that are there in the path of bhakti. So Ravan is someone, Maya is someone, Dharmaraj is someone. So all of these are not actually people, they are principles. And then people want to know God. Is God a someone or not? And so there is an expression, the anthropomorphization of God. That means you make God into a human being. So in different religions, they say so-and-so is an incarnation of God, like Krishna or Buddha or Christ or Vishnu or any of these different avatars. And this is because it's very difficult for people to understand things which are intangible. And sometimes in Gyan, it has been said that, okay, Dharmaraj is the avyakt form of Brahma Baba, because there's also an expression or a piece of Gyan that applies to BKs, and that is that there is the Dharmaraj and there is the tribunal. So when you leave your body, you will go in front of Brahma Baba and the tribunal, which is the 8 jewels, because they know you. And of course, this was at the time when the Brahmin family was quite small and everybody knew everybody. So that made a total sense. But now that the family is very large, they don't necessarily know you as in this life. And so we have to also understand it in that way, but also in a larger way. And so the reality is that you will come face to face with Shiv Baba through the avyakt form of Brahma Baba, and you will see visions of what you did that was against Baba particularly, and against the yagya or something like this. And then there will be the experience of some or another type of punishment, and it's called gupta, that means incognito, because it goes on in your mind. And because you are not in your body at that time. And there are some who leave their body before the destruction, before the final Dharmaraj, and so they go into the womb of a next mother, and then in there they also meet God in some form or another, either as light or as the avyakt form of Brahma Baba. They also see visions, and they also experience different kinds of punishment in the mind. All this is in the mind. Now, in the scriptures, whether it's the Garud Puran or whether it's Dante's Inferno or any other description of what happens to who for what reason, the descriptions are there. And so then the illustrators make pictures about it, and people start thinking of it as something quite tangible and physical. But in reality, what Baba's saying is it all takes place in your mind. And your mind is something that you can see pictures in it. You can experience things rather like in a dream. And so all of this is Dharmaraj Puri, you can say. It's the land of Dharmaraj. But it goes on, it all takes place in your mind. And even if you look at someone who's alive in the body, but they are experiencing pain. Now, you cannot experience what their pain is. You can see on their face or hear in their cries or whatever, but it's happening to them. And then you are watching their response to it, but you cannot experience their pain. Only they can experience their pain. So it's very personal, it's very internal, and this is why it's called Gupt.
Regarding the story of the brother you mentioned.
Oh yeah.
So what did he do? Hopefully he didn't give up. And what is the solution to this?
Well, he did give up. And then I didn't see him after that. So I don't know what happened after that. But I think that his situation was, on one hand, his situation, but on the other hand, it was a part of what Dadi was teaching us, who were in front of all these various situations, so that we could understand that one of the things that takes the form of punishment is that you cannot hear Baba's knowledge. So we don't know what karma you do so that you cannot hear Baba's knowledge. But I think also, any BK who's listening to the Murli, each BK listens to it not really according to the Murli, but according to them, because you receive the Murli according to yourself. And this is why going over the Murli many times is quite good, because every time you go over that particular Murli, it's a different moment. And so you receive it a little bit differently. And when I was looking at the Murli of November 2nd, which was Monday, right? And I read it for some people on the day before because of the time difference. And then I went over it again a few hours later, which was then our time for the Murli. And I experienced it as a very different Murli, although I knew very well it was the same Murli. So, just sometimes the moment where you listen to it being different, you hear it differently. Then there was another thing that Dadi told me, is that there was one BK who took the course and started the Murlis and got a copy of one Murli, and then circumstances took that soul away, and they were away for 5 years, and then they came back. And during those 5 years, every day they read that same Murli, and it sustained them, and they were able to progress at the same rate at others who read a different Murli every day. And she thought that was something to note, because a single Murli had the power in it to sustain us all by daily reading it for 5 years. And that's pretty amazing. And so there are these phenomena that happen, and when we can't really imagine them unless they actually happen, and then we have to think about them and realize something about the Murli when we think about it, that, wow, that is really powerful. Because any other thing, you read the same thing for 5 years, you'll be fed up with it after the first 20 days, let alone 5 years. So the Murli has got so much in it. And the words are so simple, but they're so deep, and it lends itself to pondering and looking at it from different angles, to maybe an indefinite, unlimited extent. And that also is a proof that this is God talking, because a human being can't do that. Not possible.
Another question: when Baba talks about transformation of the world, is it happening now? Will it happen in the future?
Well, at the moment, what we are seeing is so many things are collapsing. The earth is balanced, and this balance is getting unbalanced, seriously unbalanced. And this is part of what's happening, what's creating the climate change and the crazy weather, and the infrastructures, the economic systems, the family systems. So many things are becoming dysfunctional. And so we're seeing collapse in many, many areas, many forms of collapse, and people who are more aware of them, are more concerned about them. Some people are in denial, so then there's lots of conspiracy theories, which creates more confusion. There's predictions and. But there's also a feeling that a lot of people have. It's not quite clear. Probably the clearest thing that is actually evolving and developing and coming together is technology. So one is the weapons technology or the weaponization of inventions that are made. But on the other hand, there's incredible advances made in psychology, in medicine, in the artificial intelligence and electronics and computers and the creation of new materials. So there are many, many things that will be useful in the golden age that are being created at this time. And Baba had said that the scientific community is preparing things for the golden age. They're also preparing things for destruction, like nuclear bombs and other things like that. And in terms of the human beings, one thing that's happening is young people are quite visibly getting very concerned about being economical and taking care of the planet, and concern about the future, concerned about interaction which is not racist or misogynistic or anything like that. So there is a natural evolution of people seeing each other in a much purer way than was going on. And so this is, I think, just a sign that there is this new flower coming up, and I think there's going to be more and more signs of that. One thing we know is that there are many people who have been in Gyan for a long, long time. They leave the body and then they reincarnate, but they reincarnate as very, very advanced people. And there must be quite a lot of them, and the number is getting more and more. And so that energy of souls who learned all the knowledge, they did yoga, some may come back to Baba and carry on, but some may have reached as far as they needed to reach. And so they don't come back to Baba, but they're like new people. Some people also talk about, I think it's called indigo people, a new type of human. And so this is also happening. So there's definitely a transition taking place. And I suppose until we get full-on big-time war, it remains more incognito. But there's signs of it. And I think also the Gyan itself and the way that we practice Raj Yoga also is coming to another level, becoming more global, more widely comprehensible to people of all backgrounds, and not just only someone with a Hindu background. This is, I think, something that's happening. And that's also important because, Baba has talked a lot about Baba has to be revealed. And then we think about what that means. We may think about it in a relatively gross way, but it may not actually be a gross thing. It may be different from what we think. So there's this evolution going on in the practice of Raj Yoga, the quality of Raj Yogis, the way that we understand the knowledge. All of this is evolving, and it's a combination of it's predestined and it's our effort and maybe Baba and the ancestor souls giving vibrations and inspirations. There are many things that are happening, I think, that are very incognito, I think is the best word. That's intangible work going on that we can't really put our finger on, but we can maybe feel that something like this is going on. And Baba very often will pull the ancestor souls into the subtle body of their Brahman body and use them to give visions or to give inspirations to different people who need to be sort of awakened or activated at different moments according to his plan. We know something, but we cannot really say that we know everything. And I would say more shall be revealed. It's a wonder, really. So stay with it.
One is if you could do a class on how to listen to Murli.
Well, I do that every day in different ways. I do my best. And so I think that what we're trying to do with these Sunday and Wednesday is, looking at the Murli from different angles. I do Murli notes and various different ways to churn, because, listening to the Murli means you need to be ready. You need to be soul conscious. Listen to the Murli in a soul conscious state, knowing that Shiv Baba, through Brahma Baba, is talking to the soul. So be in soul conscious state and be focused and really attentive. And the circumstances of reading the Murli or listening to the Murli they vary. And I remember one very interesting time I was in Madhuban, and for several days I was listening to the Murli in a state of consciousness that was really very high, and it was as if I was sort of transported into some, extremely high place of study where, God is teaching. You can imagine, like that sort of Plato's Academy or something like that, but not even that, much, much higher. And that lasted for a few days. And during that time, I was really pulling in the meaning of the Murli in a manner that was much more, you can say maybe much greater recognition of who is telling this and who am I who's listening direct to God, this type of thing. And so every so often you kind of get it on another level and then you kind of go back to normal. But what to me, the important thing is to, listen to it. And also it's so available, so easily available. Go through it again, study it, and churn on it. Because the churning is the process for getting the Murli to reveal its soul. And Baba often used to talk about how every Murli has a soul. And the soul of the Murli is the essential secret points that are buried within it, but that can be brought to the surface through churning. And you can't do this thing called churning with any other literature except the Murli, because the Murli comes directly from the mind of God, and the human mind is different. God is not a human. He doesn't think like a human. And he's making you like himself in the sense of enabling you to think in the same way as he thinks by churning the thoughts that he has, that he speaks, and that's a really amazing thing.
Another question on drama. So, should we do some special meditation like giving sakash or something for a particular thing to be achieved? Or just be optimistic about drama and focus on our purusharth?
Well, I think it depends on what's coming up. And there are times when Dadi Prakash Mani talked about a situation where there was a need for a lot of sakash, a lot of focused attention of Brahmins in order for getting something to happen. And it did happen. And what that tells us is that we need to be ready that as and when we get a signal from Baba through Madhuban, through whatever, that, okay, and this time focus on this because we need this energy for this to happen. I remember when Didi Manmohini was very ill with brain tumor, and Baba gave the order that everyone must give special meditation so that the womb where the soul goes is very correct, and the soul takes birth in a very correct and good circumstance. That was interesting. And then, we had these different programs like Million Minutes of Peace, and everyone donated yoga. There was one time when Baba said, "Oh, you're not meditating, you're not paying attention to me, I'm not coming anymore." And everybody said, "Oh, let's do 24 hours meditation." And I was there in Madhuban at the time. And so there was like 20,000 people seriously meditating. And I wasn't in that gathering because I had some work I had to do a few, maybe 100 meters away from the what's it called? The Diamond Hall. I could feel the energy. And when a lot of BKs are meditating, you feel the energy and it just allows everything to line up. So if you happen to have any work to do, it'll work really well. I remember when I had to do a particular project, I was told, you better do this in Madhuban because you're going to need the vibrations of Madhuban to get this done. It was a big project. And it was true, because the energy of strong meditation going on in a particular place by a lot of BKs makes things line up and they work. So that when we do world meditation, we do Amrit Vela every day. It's like an energy that circles the earth every day, all the time. And the more we upgrade the quality of our yoga, the more we are able to hold that concentration and send out those vibrations, the more the people of the world become able to feel it. And I think this is a very important thing, which Baba calls service of the mind. And so we must do experiments with yoga, but especially make sure that the quality of our yoga is really good. And to make the quality of our yoga good, we have to do study and we have to do service, because when we do study and service, it produces an effect of pure karma, which gives us like cash or like an energy with which to go into yoga. And Daddy Janki used to say, you need power to take power. So if you're not strong enough to grasp Baba's energy, study and service will give you that extra boost of power so that you can actually do that. And so for us to do all four subjects, Gyan, Yoga, Dharna, Seva, in the context of the confluence age with our Brahmin companions, this is a very, very good arrangement to move forward well. So we need to understand it and take good advantage of it. And then according to today's Murli, whatever people's behavior is, that's their problem. Don't make it your problem, because it interferes with your ability to progress. You get distracted really by it. So be careful not to let that get in the way of your progress.
In the Murli of November 1st, Baba said Maya is Sato Rajo Tamo. How come Maya is said to be Sato? And why does Baba sometimes say the 5 elements of nature is Maya?
Okay. Maya, which is very gross and visibly negative, that would be Tamu. But there are forms of Maya that are very, very subtle and very deceptive. So that would be Sato Maya. And so there's Sato Rajo Tamo refers not to pure, middle, and impure. There's a lot of things that's covered by Sato Rajo Tamo, and mostly it means new and integrated and powerful, all the way to old and rotten and disintegrated, which corresponds to very pure to very impure. So thinking about these 3 gunas, Sato Rajo Tamo, is quite interesting to do, because it's not so straightforward as you might think. 5 elements of nature are called bhut. Bhut is a word for a ghost also. And so in bhakti, they will worship the water, the sun, the different 5 elements, and they are matter. So people try to acquire special siddhis, special powers by doing this quite ordinary or low-grade bhakti. A lot of people, they will do meditation with a candle flame. That's an example of bhut, because it's fire, it's an element of matter. But they get something from it, so they do it. And then there's also a relationship between Maya and matter, because as a yogi, you need to conquer matter, and you also need to conquer Maya. And Maya comes to your attention through matter, and not otherwise, because it's to do with what you see and what you hear and what you want in the physical world. And that can take a very subtle form of, you want power. People's big thing is they want power. And power is quite subtle, but it's still Maya. And it's still over physical things. You can't have power over God. Not possible.
With our parts being fixed, including the making of wrong actions, is there some effort to lower the outcome of Dharmaraj?
Well, it's quite complex, all this, really quite complex. And so it's a paradox. On one hand, you have free will, and on the other hand, it's predestined. And you need to know with which thought, with which moment, with which angle you need to use which approach. And that's the game. So in the Murli today, Baba said, don't do wrong actions. But if you do, you didn't have any choice, because it was fixed in drama, just to make you crazy. And then you have to say, what do I do with this? And so he says, well, you have to position yourself on the razor edge between free will and destiny, and hold steady without cutting your toes while you're dancing on that razor's edge. And that is a position of perfect balance and perfect equanimity in the face of all these paradoxical pairs of opposites. So that is something to ponder on, which enables you to grasp something very, very subtle, which only very few BKs could actually grasp. And so how do you do that? You have to think about it. It's high level Raj Yoga, but there has to be high level, middle level, low level, because everybody's doing it as best as they can. But someone who's doing it and they want to go to a higher level, well, Baba will give them questions like, all right, don't do wrong action, but if you do, it's fixed in drama, so there. Then you say, what? He says, yeah, think about it, figure out that one. And you have to go back to the drawing board and figure it out. That's not so easy, but it's very interesting. I'll keep you busy for a few months.
How do we know where we have reached on the scale of Sato, Rajo, ...
I think it's quite difficult. It is possible. There were occasions where Baba had talked about this, and he would say, well, no one has even really reached Rajo, let alone Sato. And so that means we have to come to terms with the fact that mostly everyone is doing spiritual effort in quite a gross manner, which is Tamil. And so we need to make our effort more and more subtle. And I think that, there are, as you progress, he talks about the usefulness of doing this practice for a very, very long time. And a long time is like so far as 80 some years. And then you leave the body, so you can't go too much further than that. But if in Bhakti, very often they say it takes 50 years to really be a good yogi, so you've got a ways to go. But even if you are a yogi since 50 years, you just realize that, no, I still have a ways to go, because it's still not quite subtle enough, still not quite balanced enough. So I think the perfect balance, or the Sato stage, is where you're very stable and steady in your karmatit stage, with exams coming thick and fast, but you can handle them and you can stay with Baba whenever you want. And I've seen that, in the dadis, and so we know that that level is there. Brahma Baba's level, Mama's level, and each one of us is moving along, and we do our best to self-evaluate all the time, and I think we get better at it as time goes by, but it's not so easy. The only person who can really judge you is God, and I think it's also very good to not allow yourself to be judged by somebody else, because they will judge you according to them, and they're not God, and it can be very misleading if you do that. So I wouldn't do that. So maybe we should complete and have a few moments with Baba and just think specially about our karma, our quality of remembrance, and be willing to be called to account for whatever it is that we do. Be ready to handle our outstanding karmic debts with courage, with good faith, and enthusiasm. Yeah. Om Shanti.